Today we are going to talk about killer USPs. Build your killer USP. That is our session today. Drive sales in only 7 seconds. What does that even mean? Well, we will get to that in a little bit. So I gave you a little bit of an introduction already, a little bit more now. My name is Patrick Rose. I'm a freelance consultant for the past 7 years now. I focus on product strategy, game design, and market analysis. And I love the field of game psychology, especially. And I connect it to the business field. So understanding what kind of game designs are required in order to make a successful game, make sales, but also drive retention and monetization, for example. And just a little bit of extra info here. So I have been working on a few games you might have heard of, and that is, for example, Dark Souls and Elden Ring. I've been working on the Dragon Ball series, on a few games there, Witcher 3 to be precise, Naruto, Little Nightmares, the Dark Pictures Anthology. So a few games you know of, especially for Bandai Namco, but I also work for other AAA clients these days, among them Wizards of the Coast. And what else can I name? Starbreeze is one of my current clients as well. So I'm getting around quite a lot, seeing a lot of different projects. And I also work a lot with indie studios trying to make mobile games. For example, I also consider myself as a free-to-play and service game expert. Today, we will focus a little bit more on premium games, though. And this is what I did in the past, and this is what I support my clients with. And now, since you now know enough about me, let's jump into the topic finally. Well, before we get there, I need a little bit of an icebreaker. I want you to let me know what the best game of 2025 is. So break the ice and use the chat now. You have 10 seconds. Peak. Peak is certainly peak. I know I'm not the first person making that joke. What else do we got? Come on. Best game of 2025. I will write mine. So, Night Train. Nice. Need for Speed Underground 2. Wait, what? Oh, KCD 2 or Clair Obscur. Surely, to me, it's Clair Obscur. And we both did the mistake. I wrote it with an E in the end. It's French. You don't write it with an E. I will correct that. And my sister did the same mistake. My sister is studying in Finland, in Kouvola. Oh no, that's not true. Or is it? I forgot. She is studying in Finland, and she is studying game design, and she made like a nice piece of art from Clair Obscur, and she even wrote it like draw the letters into that, the title of the game, and she also put the E there. And I was the evil person who told her that looks awesome, but I'm sorry, there's an extra E, which is not supposed to be there, and she was devastated. Luckily, in the digital age, it was really easy to fix that mistake. So using AI. My game of the year, Clair Obscur, definitely. I love that game, and I was lucky enough to just 3 weeks ago, I actually talked to the lead writer, Jennifer Yen, in Seoul. I met her, and we had bingsu. That is, if you don't know what that is, that shaved ice cream, Korean shaved ice cream. We had it together, talked a lot about Clair Obscur. So, okay, icebreaker done. Thank you very much. You have some very good choices here if it comes to the game of the year. Now, next up, I want you to tell me, what does USP even mean? What does it stand for? Is there anyone here who actually knows why you are here? Unique selling point. Um, Correct. I would say so. I think officially it's actually called unique selling proposition. I also prefer saying unique selling point because it's just easier to say. But the official term is unique selling proposition. Both are okay. Whatever. Unique. Unique is unique. That's what we need. Why do we need a USP? Very short word. I want to activate your brain. This is why I'm asking you. And then this way I also have less work. That's also nice. 1 or 2 words. Why do we need a USP? It's something that separates your game from competitors and makes it interesting to the players. Nice. Okay. That's all we need. Goodbye, everyone. No, we're not there yet. Stay here. Stay with me. That's basically it. Standing out, being different to competitors, and be the chosen one. I also like to say. Chosen one means people have money and have time, and they think about what to invest that money and time into, right? And then they are on the Play Store, on the Google Play Store, or the PlayStation Store, I wanted to say actually, or any other kind of store, and they have a couple of games to choose from. Now, most people will not buy all of the nice looking games, they will only buy one for the moment. And you need to be the one to stand out right now, especially in crowded markets like these. This is what we are trying to do here today. Who is my USP for? Who is actually our audience for the USP? Now, I know you want to sell a game to players, but think about who else could be the audience of your USP. Any idea? I give you 5 more seconds. 4, 3. Investors. Good, great. This is what I want to see. Investors, exactly. You, before the players even get to see your USP, your game, or anything of it, you would often show to investors if you need them, obviously. There's even some people you would want to show this USP before that, before you even talk to investors, and that is your team members. You have to convince people, maybe in your company, if you're having a bigger company and you're lucky enough that you are the chosen one who's allowed to decide what the next game is going to be. You still will have to convince people. You have to go through a green lighting process or anything. And therefore, it's really important to have a nice USP, something that stands out, something that people want to try and makes them curious. So there's a bunch of people you have to address your USP towards you. And that is players, investors, publishers, and also internals. Convince your team, also generate passion. Passion is so important in our industry. The best business strategy out there won't help you if your team isn't passionate enough to actually work on that thing, the plan you have. So, and for this, having all these audiences in mind, we have to shape our USP. I want to give you one example already, a case study I've been working on with Deck 13, Atlas Fallen. Anyone has heard of that game? And please just write no if you haven't. Okay. So apparently nobody. Yes. And that is also one of the things. My guess is you have seen trailer at some point of this game because they had a pretty big marketing campaign. The name is very familiar. Exactly. So you certainly have seen it somewhere, I'm sure, most of you at least, but you forgot about it. Why is that? Maybe the USP wasn't great enough. I worked with them. I even played the game. To me, it released around the time when Final Fantasy 16 released. I am a big Final Fantasy fan. I didn't like Final Fantasy 16 so much. It was quite boring, a little bit too long and everything. It had a lot of cool stuff in it for sure, but it wasn't overly exciting. Then I worked for this client, Deck 13. Obviously, I had to play the game, which was only around like 70 Metacritics or so. That was fun. I was in a much better flow than I was with Final Fantasy 16. The game Atlas Fallen is basically a double A production, you could say so. It has decent quality, decent production values, nice graphics, good enough, and the animations were also pretty good. I thought, but it was just not triple A. I mean, you know what I mean, double A. And what happened here? So what they did, they created a game which was heavily inspired by games like Horizon Zero Dawn, which sounds like a good thing, right? I mean, that worked really well. Horizon Zero Dawn had so many sales, so just make another game like that. However, their game was just about 70% kind of the production value of Horizon Zero Dawn. So it was kind of like a smaller version of Horizon Zero Dawn. And then also, it was about 130% or more of the price of Horizon. How is that? Because this game released several years after the release of the first Horizon game. At that time, Horizon, you partially even could play it in PlayStation Plus for free. And Atlas Fallen was a 60 euros game at that time. And then people make the decision, okay, I can play Horizon now, which is an awesome, incredible game. It looks so good. Or I could play Atlas Fallen for a much more expensive price. And maybe even they want more of Horizon. But the thing is, the brain works like we have something of a certain kind, and then we want the next level. We want the next better thing. So, and if we can't deliver the next better thing, then we need to deliver something else here. That can be a USP, a new feature. Maybe Atlas Fallen, if it just had a feature that Horizon doesn't have, you can only get it in this game and it looks interesting enough so you want to try, that would be awesome too. They had some interesting features. They had some really interesting battle system, which I love. I would love to see that in other games too. It's really innovative, but it was really difficult to show it off truly in trailers or anything else. So, and basically it didn't show off a unique features that justify the high price tag. This is a very typical case study. I was basically hired to understand what happened and what they should do with potential next games to avoid the low sales Atlas Fallen had. Again, I love this game. I had more fun with it than with Final Fantasy 16, which is ridiculous. But Final Fantasy 16 had much more sales because of incredible production values and a lot of uniqueness, and of course, obviously, the Final Fantasy brand. Sad. So what do we do to avoid this? What I often do, I'm also a business analyst, right? So I analyze games, I analyze the market, I do forecast, I can foresee the future by looking into my crystal ball and tell you how many units your game is going to sell by just looking at its concept. That was my main job at Bandai Namco actually for 3 years. I saw a lot of games and evaluated many game pitches. And what I would usually do, this is one example from one of my forecasts I did recently. This was for this was a benchmark collection, comparable collection of games for a game that I have forecasted, which was a platformer, 2D platformer game. What I would do first is I would look at the market. I would try to understand what kind of games are out there that are as similar as possible to the product we are going to make. And then I would try to understand, I would list them all, or the most important ones. And then I would try to understand in which range of sales we would most likely be. These are Steam owners, more or less sales, but basically sales. And then I can kind of estimate, okay, we are somewhat in this area. We're kind of like this production value, this type of game, this kind of audience. So we will probably land somewhere here with these unit sales. Very roughly, it's much more complicated than this, but this is the base of my forecasts. So why do I tell you all this now about forecasting? Well, this is also how you can see what you need in order to stand out. Because now if you just make another Inside, let's say exactly the same game, 100% the copy, you wouldn't make any sales, because why? There's insight already, right? So we need to be different to insight in order to make sales. So how do we make sales now in this whole field of competitors or comparables? Well, we understand how they have been different, why they got their spot here. And we have here one point, which is the Metacritic score, for example. Some of these stand out just because they are really, really good games with the Metacritics, as we can see. And this is how they have very high sales. And the picture is actually quite clear. In the platformer genre, it's not the same in every genre, but in the platformer genre, the Metacritics seem to be still quite important. Lower Metacritics often lead to lower sales. That doesn't count for all games. I know it sounds really intuitive, but there's a lot of genres where the Metacritics are really not important. I did the analysis. I can help you with these things. In the platformer genre, Metacritics is important, as you can see. Another thing, so one way to stand out is just very clearly make a really good game. And that seems so obvious, right? But there's also other ways to stand out. So sometimes we have lower Metacritics. Actually, this example isn't perfect, but let's take this one here. Katana Zero has 83 Metacritics among other games with 88, 88, and so on. How was this able to be here, have so many sales, even though it's a worse game? Well, Katana Zero has katanas in it. That alone is interesting. But if you look at the trailers, I don't have the trailer here with me now. If you look at the trailers of Katana Zero, in the first seconds, it already shows you different gameplay that you don't find in all the other games. You have that samurai guy with a katana and do cool moves with time stopping and everything. And that alone can be a USP that pushes the game up here in the higher sales. Then we can also check the pricing. That on its own can be a USP. If you, for example, have a game here that is much cheaper than the other ones, that can be a USP already. Let's say there's no platformers out there that are $5. You put a $5 platformer out there, maybe that alone will make a game stand out. We see that especially with free-to-play. When free-to-play rise, that was a USP in itself. Fortnite was basically the first battle royale game out there that was free. Genshin Impact was kind of considered a Zelda Breath of the Wild clone at that time. We now know it's eventually very different to Breath of the Wild, but it was free with very high production values. Making a game free, the pricing itself can be a USP. So, and this is how you could make your first sighting. You list all the games which are as similar as possible to what you're going to make, and really be thorough. Go through hundreds of games at best. Usually, my list is also much bigger. And on Steam Spy, you can collect them quite well. You can sort them by genre and then pick out the games that are very similar to your type of game and make a very nice and fancy list like I did here. And then you can actually understand what you need in order to reach what sales and how you can be different to what we see here. So now this is a little bit dry. This is a little bit of analytical work. Let's now talk a little bit more about the game and maybe design, which is usually more fun. So now I want to talk about a USP source. Do you have an idea about what I could mean when I say USP source? Where is your USP coming from? What area, what category is your USP like? And I have mentioned at least two now already. Any idea? If you don't have an idea, just write no, so I know that you are still listening, because I can't see your faces. Auto mechanics, great. Antti, thank you so much for this. I love that. Yes. What's a USP source? Let me go through a few examples. Mechanic or genre mix. You have a new mechanic, something that hasn't been there before. A grappling hook, for example, has been very, very popular. And then grappling hooks exist since a long, long time already. However, in 3D shooter type of games or open world games or something, it's a little bit of a newer thing. And then also the grappling hook feature itself can be used in different ways. For example, there's different kind of grappling hook features. And the nice thing about them is they're very easy to show off in trailers. You have a guy shooting the grappling hook, something funny is happening, done. Easily to show off in 7 seconds. So mechanic, not easy to invent, but can be easy to show off if it's good. Other good examples here, super hot, obviously, you don't move, time stops. Portal has, well, portals. So it's so easy to show in the trailer. In 7 seconds, everyone gets it right away and everyone wants to experiment with it. It makes people curious. Mechanic is usually a great tool, but not easy to invent. Visuals and art style. So thank you so much, Antti, for your participation here. I feel like you know my presentation already. Can't be because I put it together today. So visuals and art style. What is going on here? Obviously, you have a very interesting fancy art style, like Cuphead, for example. That alone, again, sells. I would even argue Cuphead was a pretty nice game, but it wasn't necessarily so much fun to me, at least, to play. But it had so high ratings. People loved the art style. They also said it's a great game. But I believe the main selling point was simply the art style. And they marketed it everywhere. They were introducing their artists and everything. And they built their whole brand around this art style. That worked really well. There's a lot of more examples like this. You could also mention Zelda Wind Waker with its cell shading look at that time, though Zelda doesn't really need a USP. It's a USP just by being Zelda. So in this, you would probably also know a lot of examples now if I ask you for art style, which are unique. And if you have examples, by the way, you can also post them right here in the chat. If you want to say anything, just write it, no problem. Theme and setting. Also quite straightforward and obvious. Bioshock, for example, talking about the underwater city of Bioshock, or also the Sky City in Bioshock as well. In Stray, you play a cat, which itself, a cat in a cyberpunk scenario, which itself is an USP and a reason why people would play it. Again, Stray itself, the game, I didn't find very interesting. There was not a lot of game mechanics as such. The narrative and art design was nice, but it was setting a theme why people got interested in it in the first place. Production value and presentation. Antti, I will get back to your question in a moment. Production value and presentation, mainly seen in AAA games, and you would think like, oh, well, I can't compete with that. However, some games do compete with this, even though they're indie studios, and these are, for example, Hellblade. You might have heard of Hellblade. It looks like a AAA game. It looks really, really impressive. But it's basically just a 4-hour experience. And in my opinion, it should be even shorter. They tried to stretch the game with the puzzles, which were totally unnecessary. I love the game, but the puzzles was too much. And they stand out with a kind of low cost production because it was simply short, but such high quality and very smartly designed. And Kena Bridge of Spirits, this studio is very experienced if it comes to animations. It worked on animation movies, and therefore their game looked great. But eventually, it's also at best a AA production, and eventually an indie game. So, Antti, what are you asking here? Would having 2 or more USPs for a game make it too weird or dilute the outcome? That is a really, really good question. So there's something I've seen that quite a lot in bigger companies when they want to innovate and they start an innovation committee or a think tank for innovation or something like this. What they often do is they just try anything that just sounds crazy and weird just to try out stuff. Yeah, that's nice, but it's not very strategic. The problem about that is that you try things, but you don't know anything about what you're doing there. A much smarter way is using proven concepts, but enhance them or make them look different or mix them in a new way. That also means usually there's something people know already. What I would always recommend is use a base that you know that works. Making a platformer game, for example, people love platformers, but then adding a little bit or a little bit more, that's also fine, to make it interesting. The genre mixes also work perfectly fine. Then you have two base genres that people know, but you mix them together in a new way. So having the base that people are familiar with is often really, really important, also for the sake of accessibility, because people only buy what they trust. And then they also buy what makes them curious. So the trust point still remains really, really important. Having that trustworthy base is a big factor. I hope that answers your question, Antti. And if it doesn't, then okay, it does. Thanks. Good. Next point here. It's 9 categories, by the way, so we still have a few. Pricing and business model. This is the one I mentioned before. And I have the example Fortnite and Genshin Impact. I mentioned these before too. They made AAA-ish kind of game concepts free to play. And they won the marks. Both of these games have been on #1 in total revenue worldwide for quite a while. So they were massive just because of actually taking stuff that has been there before, but making it free and creating another monetization around it. That was their only USP. And this is why people buy, because why wouldn't they? It's that they can play the greatness of such games for free. Of course they play it, and then you just have to understand how to monetize them. Now it's too late. Now everyone has the free-to-play shooters out there. When I started the free-to-play research 12 years ago, people did not believe that there will be AAA free-to-play games. They did it. Everyone forgot it now. Everyone forgot that I said that together with my team, not only me, our games research team, we all said like it's gonna happen because it absolutely makes sense. Nobody wanted to believe it. Everyone said free to play is only browser games or maybe mobile games, but that's it. Not real games. There we go. USP. Telltale games with the episodic format. That is another example for a different type of business model, which worked. It works only so and so long. When there's too many people doing the same thing, then, well, the ocean becomes redder and redder, right? Next one is accessibility, which is a heavily underestimated USP source, in my opinion. Taking a game that is already extremely successful, maybe Dark Souls or a roguelike game, but making it much more accessible. So roguelike were considered as too hardcore. And this is one of the other things. Another example, what people a couple of years, 7 years ago, people said roguelike will never be mainstream. Then we made it a little more accessible by creating rogue lights, games that give you some progress when you lose. You just lose the core gameplay loop right now, but you still, with more progress, can move on. They made it more accessible. Vampire Survivors is one of the most accessible roguelite games you can think of. It's basically on the mobile phone, it's one finger controls, and it's still very complex. And it's still very addictive and a hardcore game, which you can play many, many hours and even weeks. So accessibility is a huge USP source and heavily underestimated. If you want to create a USP, this is one of the first things I would tackle. Accessibility. Journey is another good example. Everyone can play Journey. Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the main success stories, one of the main success factors of Breath of the Wild is not just only the open world, but it's also the fact that everyone can find their own solutions, no matter of how much of a noob you are. I gave it to people who usually don't play games. They really enjoyed Breath of the Wild. They avoided the battles because they could, because it's so accessible. It's awesome. Jonne asked a question. Outside couple of outliers, do episodic games really work as a distribution model? Good question. So it is a USP, or it used to be a USP. So it helps a lot that people would buy because, yeah, that is something new. They want to experience that. However, there's another issue, and that goes a little bit more into the analysis direction of my job. And I say that very often if it comes to episodic formats. You have episode 1, and all the purchases of episode 1, consider them as like 100% of your player base. Then you have episode 2. If you're lucky, 60% of the people who purchase the episode 1 will purchase episode 2. Then another 60% of these 60% will purchase episode 3, and so on. After episode 3, usually creating episodic games is not very profitable anymore because the production value should increase. You should make better and better episodes, but the amount of people purchasing these episodes will keep decreasing. Of course, it feeds back into the first episode. You create a new episode, it feeds back into the first episode. So a few more people come in the first episodes, but it's not enough usually for sustainable business model over time. This is why Telltale, people don't understand that this is the main reason why Telltale games eventually didn't work out. And this patch will have a similar problem. I don't understand why the business analysts don't tell them these things. It is just logic. And I've been going through this business case so many times. So this patch is an incredible, awesome game. And I love these. I also loved the Telltale games. But after 3 episodes, it's more or less over. Or they have to find solutions to avoid this kind of securitis almost, the attach rate effect. That could be, and they tried that in Telltale games, but I think it was season 3 of The Walking Dead. They called it a new frontier. They made it in a way that you could start playing this without having to play all the episodes before that. They tried their best to market it that way. You don't need to play the other games to start here now. It didn't work anymore because they burned it into the heads of the people. If you don't watch the first episodes, you don't even have to start with that one. So that is the episodic format for you. A little bit of an excursus now. Jonne, I hope that helped answering your question. Okay, let's go on. The next one here, motivational angle. I will not go too deep here, but this is one of the things I usually love to talk a lot about. It's the psychology of things. Why do we play games? And it's always motivation. Fun and engagement is motivation. Psychology actually just calls it motivation, all of this. And there's 3 main factors in self-determination theory. This is going too fast now. You will not be able to keep that all in mind, but watch my other content on YouTube, for example, or follow me, or buy my course if you want to, or hire me. I tell you a lot about self-determination theory. So 3 main motivational factors why we do pretty much anything in life: autonomy, relatedness, competence. We want to make our own decisions, significant decision making, autonomy. We want to be with other people and want to care for them, relatedness. And competence is the most traditional if it comes to games. We want to improve, become better, and learn and master things. These 3 factors are the main factors why we play games as well and why we have fun with games. Everything else you can basically ignore. Focus on these 3 factors with your designs, you will win. So if we look at genres from that psychological perspective, usually a genre type has certain focuses if it comes to these 3 factors. For example, the Souls type of genre focused a lot on, or let's say roguelike genre, focused a lot on competence because it's very difficult, but you also become better and you feel really, really good and get into the flow when you manage to deal with all the challenges. A game like Hades mixed in a lot of relatedness because there was suddenly a lot of story to it, characters you can care for and such. And that was a huge driver for Hades, and it was eventually one of the main USPs for Hades and one of the main engagement factors, which almost no other roguelike game had at that time. I have another example here, Blueprints. It's also basically a roguelike, which is usually competence driven, but now Blueprints focuses mainly on relatedness and autonomy. So they use a totally different angle, psychological angle, on the same genre. And that is also huge and heavily underestimated because almost nobody understands this psychology. And therefore, I also believe there's so much room to innovate and have USPs still in games, even in a crowded market like this. Overall experience and identity blend. I will not go much into detail here. Hi-Fi Rush, Death Stranding, Nier Automata, this whole experience is so unique and special, even though these kind of genres already existed. I mean, Hi-Fi Rush blends the music beats with beat 'em up type of gameplay. Death Stranding is just its very own experience, as Kojima would like to say, a trend type of game. And the Automata, well, just play it for a few minutes and you will feel already how that game feels. And then last one, the meta layer. Also often not considered, but it's an important USP source. The Stanley Parable, for example, a walking simulator, though much, much more than this, because the meta layer. If you haven't played it, play Stanley Parable. It's such an important game, and it's so much fun. It's so interesting. Undertale goes in a very similar direction. Can't everything I say about Undertale will be a spoiler. Just play it, and it's an incredible piece of art if it comes to the meta layer, especially, and Inscription as well. Play these games. So, where does your uniqueness come from? It's important now that you memorize these. Maybe take a screenshot or a picture with your phone right now, and think about the games you're making. I figured you're close to finishing the production. Not sure how far you are individually with your games, but when you are already quite far with your game, it's important that you understand where in these categories you are unique. What is your source of uniqueness? Now, since you got that, let's move on. Why? Because I said that in the title, you only have 7 seconds. Why do I only have 7 seconds? Attention span. That is the easy word, maybe word. I have a very insightful little chart here for you. We have on the left side, oh, I don't need that, I have this. We have on the left side the motivation, low or high, right? That is the stuff we talked about, the 3 factors: relatedness, autonomy, competence. The more we have, or the better the mix is, the more motivation we have, the more fun people would potentially have with the game if they started playing it. But then on the other hand, we have the accessibility or feasibility, you could also call it, meaning how feasible is it now tonight for me to play Dark Souls, turning on my PlayStation or my computer while the kids are jumping around and I have to take care of them as well. How feasible is that for me? Not very feasible. Well, then I just play Candy Crush Saga very quick, because even though I have high motivation to play Dark Souls, I really want to play it. It's just not feasible for me now. So we always have this conflict. And that brings us to this. User engagement is a green area with high feasibility and high motivation. There is a lot of free-to-play mobile games there. Extremely accessible, extremely feasible to play, and extremely high motivation too. That is all the retention and engagement design you see in mobile games and service games often. And if you are in the red area, then you are having trouble. And that works. This is game design, basically. Not only game design, that works for everything in life. Even though we love something, sometimes we still choose just the thing that is easier for us now. And we don't do the thing we love. You know that yourselves, I guess. And that is also why in trailers or marketing materials or in our pitch deck, we only have 7 seconds, maybe even less sometimes, to convince our audience of our USP. And that's what we're trying to achieve. A little warning here, since we started late, I'm going to take a little longer. I hope this is okay for most of you. Feel free to screenshot this. I think I'm going to share this presentation later as well, or at least the main slides of that. So I think we have a channel for this. So don't worry too much about the screenshots now. And now, how to shape your own USP. Step 1, define your core. What is it? What's your game? Is it a platformer? Is it well, whatever, right? What is it? Very simple. What makes it different? And this is where you start thinking first of what is it actually, what makes my game a little bit more special than other games. That doesn't confirm yet that it's truly a USP, but start thinking about it roughly. And then why should players care? And when I say care, I mean emotionally. Meaning, basically, again, the psychology I was talking about. And the more you know about psychology, the better you will be at answering this question. So these 3 questions you got to ask yourself initially in step 1. And why should players care? For example, if you go the psychological way, as I did before, you would say, because in my game, they have to overcome these challenges that they don't see in any other game. And then you also already answer the second question as well, what makes different. That would be a motivational driver. That would be the competence factor in human intrinsic motivation. So now we got step 1, define your core. The step 2 is define your USP source. Which of the 9 categories is it? That is a question you got to ask. These we just went through before. And when you understand your USP source, and I actually ask you once more, maybe try that right now if you didn't do that before. What is your USP source? When you understand that source, we can move on. I give you 3 more seconds just to think about where your game, which of these categories your game hits. And if it doesn't hit any of these categories, then maybe you have a new category for me, or maybe you should rethink your game concept. I hope it's not that one. Oh, oh no, sorry, never mind. I thought this was another question, but I didn't see that right. Good, next one. Step number 3. Write your USP phrase. How do we do that? Here is an example. It's a genre or familiar base, which is where we're coming back to what I have answered before. Yes, we should have a familiar base. Like this is a platform. It's a platformer, or it's a game with a superhero, or anything that people understand and can relate to upfront. That's something that is accessible and feasible to understand for them. It's a genre or familiar base where unique twist from USP source. So, and this is where that comes in. It's a action adventure single player game with free to play monetization. For example, it doesn't always make sense. Not just for the fact that it's unique makes it also being a good idea, obviously, but this is what you should do now. So when you have picked when you kind of know what your game is and your game base is, and when you have picked your USP source, then you can form this phrase. And this phrase is going to be really, really important. It basically sounds like an elevator pitch. That's almost what it is, but very focused on the USP here. And then test it. And you have to be very strict and harsh with yourselves. Put the phrase into everything you're now creating. So now you have your phrase. Make your trailer accordingly. Make your concept art accordingly. Always think of that phrase. Make sure your whole team gets that phrase. Ask them, in this new piece of concept art, and is there our phrase inside? Can people see the uniqueness of our game in this concept art? Or in this trailer in the first 7 seconds especially? Can they see it or not? Or in a press release, maybe even. Anything you create from that point on, put it in and test it. Show it to people and see what they say. Ask the audience, what is this game about? What do you think this game is about? And when they see that piece of trailer, 7 seconds, for 7 seconds when they see the concept art, they should at best say, oh, it looks like an RPG with a grappling hook. Yes, then you nailed it. When they can guess your USP phrase, then you nailed it. And then the next question is, did they nail it? Did it also create curiosity? Like, oh, an RPG with a grappling hook. I've never seen that before. I want to understand how that works. Can I also use it in battles then? It's turn-based battles, right? Can I use it in turn-based battles too? Or what does it do then? So then you got the curiosity. Then they want to know more. Then you know your USP is working. So ask these questions, test it. And if the answer to these questions is no, they can't nail it, they don't get it, or it doesn't create curiosity, or they want to see more, or they don't want to see more, then you have to refine it and write it again. Keep testing and basically rinse and repeat more or less. So go back to step 3, maybe rewrite it. Maybe even when you're in early concept phase, you could even go all the way back and think about your overall core and maybe pick new USP sources. That's also possible. So obviously, the later you are in production, the more difficult this becomes. But even though everything is set already and you have your game ready now, ready to ship, it's still important for you to understand, to try to create that USP phrase so you can use it for your marketing materials or to convince investors and publishers. So these are the 5 steps to create your own USP. Do you have your own USP phrase by now? Maybe in the process you did this, or maybe you did a similar exercise before. What is your USP? If you have it now ready and you want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to challenge it right away. So I will keep talking a little bit and you still have the chance to put your USP here in the chat, your USP phrase, and I'm happy to challenge it on the fly. If not, that is okay as well. I know my Finnish folks are sometimes a little bit shy. I don't mind that. So now, when we have that USP phrase, where do we put it? I said it almost. Concept art, trailers, screenshots, in your pitch deck, articles. When press releases articles, push them to make sure they mention your USP. Press releases. We have this new grappling hook RPG. It's all about grappling hooks. It's the most hookish grappling hook RPG you have ever grappling hooked. You need that. It needs to be everywhere. It needs to be so clear right in the face. That is the reason, and maybe not the only reason, but the main reason why people can only buy your game. Because even if they buy a better RPG, these other better RPGs don't have a grappling hook. So when I want to understand how that grappling hook mechanic works, I need to play your RPG. So, and then this is the reason why they would buy your game, your grappling hook RPG. So Antti wrote something. He has a phrase here for us. I want to read it out loudly very quick. Rise from the depths of our totality. Okay, thank you, Antti, for making this very complicated for me to read. Rise from the depths of a totalitarian meat lab as a failed experiment of living meat. Hunt, devour, and evolve into a monstrous abomination of your own creation. Will you embrace horror, mercy, or pure chaos? I think my first thought, it's good, but I don't get right away what this is about. If you want to tell a friend, maybe a not so smart friend, a friend that is less smart than you, Antti, if you want to tell that friend that friend should play a game you just recently played and you think this is an awesome game. Like for me, it would be Clair Obscura. I'm telling everyone, I force everyone to play Clair Obscura now. I tell them as simple as possible why they should play it. This game is a piece of art. This has amazing music and battle mechanics and the story. Forget everything you know about writing a story. You got to play this. This is much better than that stuff. So I tell them in very simple words that this is important, and I'm not necessarily making it like sounding very fancy or anything. What you put here is like you can put it on your box art on the back of your box when you sell the game and put it in shelves or in your Steam description, maybe even for your Steam description, I would put another sentence up front that makes it much more simple to understand what's going on. So a horror game where it's all about meat, for example, simple as that. Absolute meat horror. That makes it easier. And then people get it. Okay, horror game, meat. Oh, all right, what's going on here? Sounds disgusting. I want to know more. And then you can still explain the rest later, but you need the hook. And imagine that sentence in a trailer. How do you show it off in a trailer? Could be quite easy, actually. A lot of meat, a lot of horror. But if you had a voice telling you all this text, for example, that would be too much. That's already longer than 7 seconds. Here is reverse horror game. Yes. Sorry, I'm reading the chat now for everyone to understand. We got reverse horror game as a suggestion. Was one you said at some point. I really like that. Okay, you had a conversation about it already, apparently. Reverse horror game. Yeah, that sounds interesting. That makes me question, like, okay, what does that even mean? I know what a horror game is. That is our common base here. I get that. But what would a reverse horror game look like? And then I try to imagine what it could be like. Curiosity. And then I want to try it out. And there you go, USP. That works. I think that works. Maybe almost too complicated, but I believe it works. From Outcast to Unstoppable Monster, Nina wrote here. I believe From Outcast to Unstoppable Monster sounds a little bit vague. I don't know what kind of game it is. I have no imagination about it. So this common ground is not quite clear. That is missing here mainly. A reverse horror game, which is all about meat, Auntie wrote now. Yeah, maybe a reverse horror game on itself is already good enough, honestly. And then maybe you want to specify the meat. The environment is meat. A reverse horror game and the environment is meat, for example. Isn't that Scorn? There's a game like that already. And that worked really well for its USP. I think it was Scorn, right? And there it was also like everything looked like meat, everything looked like very organic around, and they showed it off so easily in the trailers, and this is why people came in. Okay, there's a lot of stuff being written now. I'll try to get back to the chat after my next slides, if that is fine with you. Oh yeah, Antti, that point I want to mention very quick. Antti is saying, I think the problem for us is that we have too many USPs, which we try to add into the description. Yes, that is a problem. Make it simple. Think back of this. Wait, you don't need to think back. I can show it to you again. The chart, this chart. Motivation is great. Motivation would be you put all the cool stuff in a very long text and motivate people. But the problem is we also always have to fight the accessibility or the feasibility to read it. Decreasing the obstacles. Now you have all this motivational text, and now you kind of have to narrow it down so people get it in the first 7 seconds, or even better in the first 3 seconds, maybe even. And then you got it. Always think of that. I know I also always have trouble. I tell people I do everything: product strategy, game design, product analysis, and stuff. And it's hard to sell people something like that. And you got to give them that exact thing you can do for them as easy and clear as possible. It's my own weakness. It's not easy. So I'm also still training. Okay. So what I'm saying here, where to put my USP? Basically, you put it in every single piece of media you're putting out there from now on. Make sure that drives the USP, that promotes the USP. Every piece of art, every sentence, maybe almost, and at least article, press release, people should get it, and then people will sell it for you as well. So, and that is actually my formula for you on how to create a great USP. I hope for the games you made so far, you already have these USPs inside. If you're still in early production of the game or concept phase even, then it's going to be much easier now for you to create a USP. And at least when you're much further, you are at least able now to understand what your actual USP is and how you should communicate it in your marketing campaign or to publishers and investors as well. If you want to know more, I think this session is recorded or maybe streamed, or I don't know exactly. Well, it's streamed to you guys for sure, how this works. But if this session is recorded, then obviously you can watch it later. If you want to have more detail, I can go a little bit more in detail with this course you're seeing here now. You can use this link. I can also post it here in the chat and get a free coupon for that course. Why do I do this? Because now you have the main content anyways. There's some specified content in the course. It's only a 1 hour course, so it's not much longer than this session. And the second reason is it's a new course and I need reviews. So please review. That would help me a lot. I will give you that one in a bit in the chat, the link to this, or you can screenshot it now. If you want to, you can also share it. There's only limited seats. So at some point it runs out and in 10 days, the time limit is over as well. But when you share it, please tell people they should leave a review. That would help me a lot. There is one other thing, and I wanted to integrate it first, but now I more see it as a bonus because it suits better here as a bonus. The viral game design, which you can also try to combine your USP with. I have a little YouTube short, and I'm not sure if you can actually hear the sound of that clip. I will just run it through, but there's also text, so no matter if you hear the sound or not, you should be able to read at least just a few seconds. You can give me some feedback if you hear the sound or not. Otherwise, it was a little bit of reading. There's a longer version of that video, 6 minutes long. Okay, no sound. Good. Fair enough. I will also share that link. And generally on my YouTube, I try to share as much free wisdom as possible, if you can call that wisdom, whatever is going on in my head. And also there, I'm happy for, well, likes and followership of such kind. And then I know there's a lot of promotion going on now. If you, in case you need support at some point with game design, user retention, or monetization, or with product strategy and market analysis, or just with your pitch deck. I've been helping people with the pitch decks, for example. 2 of my clients won pitch their contests after they work together with me. So maybe you want to do that too. Feel free to reach out, contact me. There's my code. And if you have further questions, you can ask them now in the chat. I know you ask a lot of questions already. You can also give me feedback if you want to. And if there's no questions, then I'll let you go. But I'll give you a few seconds to think about a question and type it in. And while I'm waiting, I will share these links with you I just showed you in the chat.